We're joined on the phone today by author Mark Blake. We're talking about his new book, Bring It On Home, Peter Grant, Led Zeppelin, and Beyond, the story of rock's greatest manager. Hey, Mark, how's it going today?
Hey, good, thank you, good.
It's great to be speaking with you, and I'm excited about your new book here, Bring It On Home, Peter Grant, Led Zeppelin, and Beyond, the story of rock's greatest manager. Could you tell the listeners a bit about the book?
Okay, well, Peter was Led Zeppelin's manager, as we said. He was a guy who changed the way the music business worked. He enabled Led Zeppelin to make more money than any other band had done before. He supported them 100% in everything that they did, which is most unusual for a manager at that time. And also his story itself is a real rags to riches thing. You know, he came from a very poor background, no education at all, and started out as a nightclub doorman and driving cabs, and then within 10 years was managing the biggest band in the world. So his story is fascinating to me, and Led Zeppelin's story is fascinating as well.
Yeah, and a lot of people have heard of Peter Grant, and most casual fans probably didn't know a lot of the band's management around that time. So, I mean, that says something about him.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, he appeared in their concert film, The Song Remains the Same. He made a very famous couple of appearances in that film, where you see him shaking down a bootleg poster seller and chewing out a building manager who allowed this guy into the venue to sell the posters. So he still, all Zeppelin fans that saw that film would remember that scene and will remember Peter Grant, a very imposing, formidable-looking guy. So once you see him, never forgotten.
Yeah, and that's probably pretty apropos. It seems like off-screen, he was kind of maybe that gangster guy in a way as well, kind of shaking people down behind the scenes.
Well, there was definitely some of that going on. Sometimes not as much as people thought they would. I think with Peter Grant's story, the image was everything, and people believed he did a lot of things that he didn't necessarily do. And in the course of researching this book, and even after the book came out, it's amazing how many people came to me and said, "Oh, is it true he killed someone? Is it true he went to prison for murder?" And it's like, no, that never happened. But like I say, because of his appearance and the way he conducted himself, the rumors and the stories spread, and they almost did the job for him.
Again, we're with author Mark Blake talking about the book Bring It On Home, Peter Grant, Led Zeppelin, and Beyond. And you mentioned he did so much for Led Zeppelin's career. What is it, I guess, that he was doing compared to maybe stuff that other managers weren't back then?
Well, I mean, the guy he worked for before Led Zeppelin was Don Arden, who was a famous manager and agent over here. He's Sharon Osbourne's dad.
Sure. One
of Peter's first jobs, in fact, was driving Sharon Osbourne to school. And Don believed that his artists worked for him. And so he treated his bands very badly. He didn't often pay them what they were owed. And Grant looked at that and said that's the wrong way to do things. His idea was that if you believe in the talent, you believe in the artist, then you let the artist create and be talented and do what they do best. And then the idea being we'll all make a lot of money out of this. And in Zeppelin's case, that's absolutely what happened.
Yeah, that's another guy, Don Arden. I know a lot of people from nowadays maybe remember him from cameos on the Osbournes show, kind of like the old happy grandpa singing show tunes and stuff. But yeah, he was a bad dude back then. Yeah, he was a tough guy. I mean, just saying that, some of the people who he managed speak very highly of him, but certainly his management approach was very, 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 very different from Peter's. Well, Mark, I know it's 50 years here for Led Zeppelin. Do you think without the management of Peter Grant, we'd still be kind of holding them in the high regard we do now 50 years later?
Well, I think the music is fantastic, and it's the music that's lasted, and that's what's kept it going. I think I don't know if they would have had the success they did on the scale that they did and as quickly as they did without Peter Grant's management. We'll never know for definite, but I think his approach and the way he looked after them and the way he controlled their image and controlled the media's access to them, all that kind of stuff, was revolutionary at the time. And I think he definitely contributed to their success hugely.
So with that image, do you think like Led Zeppelin themselves, do you think they bought into some of those stories? Were they maybe afraid of him or kind of just wanted to do whatever he told them to do?
I don't know. I don't think they were afraid of him at all. I mean, he did what they told him to do. There was never any of that. I mean, I think when Robert Plant and John Bonham were first in the band, they were younger and less experienced, so they may have been a little wary around him. But no, Peter always worked for Zeppelin. It's whatever they wanted. he did. But you're right. I mean, I think the band enjoyed the benefits of that image when it meant that people stayed away from them and they weren't hassled and they made lots of money. But then there were other times, I think, when the violent reputation and some of the stories, they didn't like it so much when they thought it reflected badly on them. I think the relationship became a little bit fraught at times.
Sure. Well, Mark, I know you had access to his history and a lot of other stuff that, most people don't. So, I mean, you have the definitive picture here of Peter Grant.
Yeah, that's it. I did the book with the help of his son and daughter, who'd never cooperated with any authors before. They had to sort of trust me. I had to convince them of my good intentions. But to their credit, they said, "You write the book. We're not going to censor it." They never read it till it came out. But what they did do is give me access to lots of paperwork and contracts. I mean, there's a letter in there that we've reproduced in the book from Jamaican gangsters threatening to sort of kidnap the band if they don't get $1 million next time they play in the States. So we reproduced that. That's an example of the sort of madness that was around the band, certainly in their later years. But yeah, that's it. We had access to Peter's records and these contracts and correspondence, and that really helped us build a clear picture.
Well, and I know Peter Grant managed a couple other bands as well, and I was reading that he was maybe even in talks to manage Elvis before his death. That would have been quite the turn for his career.
What he was in talks, he was going to promote Elvis's first ever British tour, because Colonel Tom Parker was still managing, always managed Elvis right till the end, and Colonel Tom Parker knew Peter Grant. They both had the same agent out in the States, and yeah, Peter was had talks about bringing Elvis to Britain for the first time. It didn't happen, and Elvis died not long after that. But I think that would have been a real coup if he'd managed to achieve that. I think that would have given him something, a great achievement beyond Led Zeppelin as well.
Well, Mark, are we seeing, managers after Peter Grant? Are they kind of following his lead and becoming, I don't know if cutthroat's the right word, but kind of more strong-arming things like you heard he did?
I think Peter belonged to a certain era, and I think that style of management has gone now. But there are certainly, he laid the groundwork for the next generation of managers who maybe did do things a little bit differently. I mean, but by the same token, the business would be very different without him. I mean, Bill Curbishley, who's managed the Who since the early 70s, would be a great example. I mean, he's a tough guy who came from a very tough background, and Peter died in 95, Bill's still going strong looking after the Who, and there's been another generation after that of younger managers who've all built on what Grant did, but Grant's style of management certainly I think belongs in the 60s and 70s. That style has died out now, which is good and bad sides to that,
Well, again, the new book, Bring It On Home, Peter Grant, Led Zeppelin and Beyond, is out now. And Mark, I know you've written a lot of other books over the years. Do you have maybe an idea of what might be coming up next?
No, I'm going to have a rest now. I'm taking a break for a bit. I don't know what I'm doing next. I've got a couple of ideas, but nothing I can talk about at the moment.
Excellent. Well, whatever it is, I'm sure it'll be great. And I know we're out of time, Mark, but thank you so much for joining me today. I appreciate it.
Thank you. It's a pleasure. Thank you very much.
And again, that was author Mark Blake. His new book, Bring It On Home, Peter Grant, Led Zeppelin and Beyond, the story of rock's greatest manager, is out now.